right, construct sinusoidal functions. So we're graphing again. Sort of. We are creating the actual formula for the graph. But I'm going to bake the graph by the points they give us to kind of help us, or help inform us on how to make our function. So it reads, the graph of sinusoidal function has a minimum point at 0, 3, and then intersects its midline at 5 pi 5. Write the formula of the function where x is entered in radians. Okay, so I'm going to graph this real fast. So I have a point at 0, 3. So I'll show you what I'm looking at. So here's 0, and then up 1, 2, 3. There's a point. That says that's the the minimum point. So our graph is going to be taller than that. Intersects its midline at 5 pi and 5. So at 1, 2, so that's 5. This is our midline. And it said, was it 5 pi? Yeah, 5 pi. So we're going to mark our x-axis as a pi. So 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi. And that's up there. And these are each pi. 5 pi. So minimum point, midline, and then the maximum point, well, maximum points would be 10 pi. So if you go 6, 7, 8, 9, there's 10. There's our maximum point. And we know our maximum point is going to be how many more? 1, 2 above. So 1, 2 above. Maybe I should lower that a little bit. Okay, so minimum point, midline, and we moved in our maximum point. So already, by looking at this, we know our midline point is at what number? It's at 5. So it's going to end in a 5. The other thing we know is that because a minimum or maximum point is on our y-axis, we have a cosine function. Right? If our midpoint was here, it'd be a sine, but because our minimum point, it's a cosine, and because it's our minimum, it's a negative. And looking at our amplitude, our midline is here, and we go 1, 2 for our amplitude, so our amplitude is 2. And the only thing left we have to figure out is what our period is. Well, we know half of our graph is 10 pi, so a full graph must be 20 pi. So what we do is we take 2 pi and we divide by 20 pi. And the pi's cross off. We divide both by 2, so we get 1 over 10. So 1 over 10 would go in there. And so that should be our function. So let's check it. So negative 2 cosine 1/10 x plus 5. So negative 2 cosine parentheses. Oh, I have caps lock on. Cosine parentheses. I'm going to come back to that. Plus 5. So parentheses. We have our x here. We'll do 1 divided by 10. Like so. And check. And right. Next question. Alright, so maximum point at 0, 10, and then intersects its midline at pi over 4 and 4. Okay, so 0, 10 is our maximum point. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5's a big one. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I think it said 0, 10 was our maximum point. That'll be right here. It looks black. It should be blue. Intersects midline at pi over 4, comma 4. So we already know two things here. Since our maximum point is on the y-axis, we have a cosine function. So I can type that in right now. We also know that our midline is at positive 4. So I can type plus 4 right now. I can look at another thing. If my maximum point is at 10 and my midline is at 4, I know my amplitude is 6. So my other number I know is my amplitude. So all I really have to figure out is what my period is. And so looking at this number, 0 to my middle point is, let's say 4 pi? I forget. Pi over 4. So we'll say here's pi over 4. And then this is 4 right here. So that's my midpoint. So our graph is going to come down and keep coming down. So we only have 1/4 of our graph. So that means that 1/2 of our graph would be 2 of these. So 2/4 pi would be right here. 2 pi over 4 pi. And then 3 pi over 4, and then 4 pi over 4, which is just simply 1. So our period is 1 pi. So we divide 2 pi over pi, because that's what our period is in this question, and we end up with just 2. So we should have 2x. Yep. Okay, next question. Graph of sinusoidal function intersects its midline at 0, 5. Okay, so we know our midline and our y-axis. So we know we have a sine graph because our midline is on our y-axis. So I can type in sine right now. Do parentheses, so I have that box. So I'll put an x in there. We don't know our period yet. We know our midline's on 5, so plus 5. So we know all that from just this statement right here. Then it has a maximum point. So then it has a maximum point, so it's going up. So we're positive at pi 6. So our amplitude is just 1 because we go from 5 up to 6. And so let's go over here and graph it. So 0, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. So pi. Okay, so here we go. So I have my point at 0, 5, and a maximum point at pi. Oh, and this should be 6 right there. I have it a little bigger than it should be. Going up to 6, and we're at pi. So this is 1/4 of a graph. Then the second quarter is at 2 pi. Third quarter is at 3 pi. And then the fourth quarter will be at 4 pi. So our period is 4 pi. Take 2 pi, divide by 4 pi. We end up with 2 over 4, which is equal to 1/2. So 1/2 x. All right, last question. Graph has a sinusoidal function as a minimum point at 0, 2. So from that, we know that it's cosine. And we know because it's a minimum point, and we're going straight up, that it's a negative number. Then it has a maximum point at 3 pi 6. Okay, so we have the minimum and the maximum. We do not have the midline. The midline number between 2 and 6 would be 4. So plus 4 is our midline point, and we have an amplitude of 2, because 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6. The last thing we need to figure out is our period. Well, if we go from 0 to 3 pi, that is half of our graph. That means that 6 pi is our full graph. So we're going to take 2 pi, divide by 6 pi. Those cross off. We end up with 1/3. So we should have 1/3 x. And we're done.